Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Geographically? Geographically. This is cool. So I would say make sure that pretty face is showing.
Yes, true.
They're going to want to see that thing. They're going to want to see that thing, Alan. That face. You good? Ready? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our latest Small Talks episode where Alan and I talked about love. Today we are going to talk about the art of communication. And when I say the art of communication, I do not suggest that I am an artist when it comes to this at all. But I think that for a long time, I didn't practice communication in a sustainable way. And I wasn't doing it logically or consciously. I don't think most people are. I think a lot of people are afraid to communicate certain things. And I think it's good to piggyback an episode like this on love.
Yeah.
When, one of the most important things when it comes to love, relationships, intimacy, and all that is communication.
I couldn't agree more. Real quick, before we jump into this episode, Kevin asked me to give you a friendly reminder.
The friendliest.
The friendliest of reminders to go to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com, click on join our mailing list. There's actually a really cool new intro to the website. When you go on the website,
on the mobile
it kind of
site.
like opens.
Yeah, on the mobile site.
On the mobile site only.
Wix is stepping their game up.
They are. And by Wix, you mean you.
Yes.
Right.
But Wix did it.
But if you go to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com, click on join our mailing list, you are going to get 3 Hyperconscious morning minutes to kickstart your Monday, Wednesday, and Friday off right. As you know, the only way your life gets better is after you get better first.
Yes.
Let us help you do that.
Yes. All right. So we were chatting. Smile over there.
Yeah.
We were chatting about communication.
Always.
Yeah, we always are. But
literally always.
So we're recording this from the hotel. So if you heard the last episode, this is obviously the one after. So we're still in the hotel. So last night we were talking about, or when we got here yesterday, we were saying, all right, what are the episodes we planned on doing? Yeah. Boom. Okay, we talked about it. And I think that communication is one of those things that it's kind of like a flood. You don't notice that it's happening in a negative way until it's too late. Like looking back on it, you're like, okay, my backyard is filled with water.
Right.
Where did that start? And little did you know there was a leak the whole time.
Right.
The whole time. And I think that for me, for the longest of times...
That's so true.
You all right over there?
No, the analogy was, yes.
Analogies are life, as they
are.
say. I think for a long time, man, I was a terrible communicator. Terrible. Because I didn't want to hurt somebody, or I didn't want to create a fight. Like, I hate conflict. I do not like it at all. I dislike it strongly. I do things to avoid it.
Right.
That's just who I am. But I think that it was always easier. Like, if you're somebody who avoids feedback, you probably avoid some level of communication.
Well, you're avoiding conflict. Therefore, you're avoiding the need for communication.
Yeah.
Proactive communication. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
that...
we're all guilty of this.
For sure.
If you're out there right now and you haven't mastered communication, like, you're guilty of this.
Yeah, and welcome to the club.
Right.
If you haven't mastered it. Because
yeah.
I don't... There are people who have, but, we're talking like the highest of high.
We were with one of them. I think Dave is extremely good at communicating.
Yeah.
And that's what speeches are. That's what writing books are. It's effective communication.
Yes.
So you have to study communication.
So should we talk about the framework by which we kind of go off of now?
Absolutely.
I'll let you explain it because it's yours.
Okay. So one of my clients and I, every time we get on the phone, we mastermind about some really incredible things. And one of the frameworks that him and I kind of came up with together was what I call now PMES: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Now, physical represents results and action. Mental represents knowledge, rationality, logic. Emotion represents emotion and feeling and experience. And then spirituality represents belief and imagination and visualization and values, right? And so I've so on my flashcard that I write every day, I write down 3 things that the listeners are aware of. But the third thing is I am the greatest master of communication, human connection, and positive influence to ever live. Now, will I ever actually get there? I don't know, but I do know that's my goal. And so studying communication is a real focus for me. And I have been very guilty of having trouble communicating with people that are more emotional and spiritual and not quite as mental as I am. So, again, PMES: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. The key is to know yourself, and more importantly, to know the other person and to speak in the language that they understand. So to break down this framework, I think of it as yin and yang. In other words, masculine and feminine energy. We all have both, but they are different. None is better than the other. It's just different. And we need to understand the difference if we want to effectively communicate. So the masculine energy, in my opinion, is physical and mental. And the feminine energy, in my opinion, is emotional and spiritual. So yin and yang. One of them needs to feel their way into action. The other one needs to think their way into action. And we all have all 4, but we're much stronger in certain ones. So Kevin and I we'll just talk about ourselves here because that's what's concrete at this point. We've been doing this for probably 3 or 4 weeks with this new framework. This is just a new framework to understand humans. So for me, my M is what I would argue is the strongest. So I'm an MPES. In other words, knowledge first, action, emotion, then spirituality. Some people are emotion first. Kevin, I would argue, is an EPMS. And so if I'm talking to Kevin, you're going to hear me say things like, how does that make you feel? Because I know he is more driven by feeling than he is by logic. And that's okay. There's no right or wrong here. There really isn't. There's apples and oranges. Both are great. You need to understand whether you're an apple and orange, and more importantly, whether or not you're talking to an orange or an apple. Because the way I talk to, I'll give you an example. I was at lunch with one of my millionaire mentors on Saturday, and he's hard M. Knowledge, rationality, logic, like hardcore knowledge. And so I'm talking to him. If I said, Jeff, how does that feel? He's not gonna he's not gonna resonate with me at all. As a matter of fact, he's probably gonna leave. No, he's not. But he's far more knowledge based. So I'm gonna, I don't think flaunt is the right word. I'm going to leverage the M portion of my personality more in a conversation with him than I would with Kevin. And that, to me, is effective communication. Speaking in the language the other person understands so that you can... Tony Robbins calls it reality bridging. He says the quality of your life is going to be correlated directly to the quality of your communication, not only with yourself, but with others. So Kevin and I have 2 different perceptions of reality. What effective communication really is, and I've studied this for many years because I sucked at it so bad, is taking each other's perception and trying to bridge the realities. In other words, get on the same page. How do you get on the same page and stay on the same page with someone you care about in an effort to build the relationship and to get somewhere better together?
Went deep there.
I like communication.
Yeah.
I can tell by this episode that I love this.
I think that, so we talked about, and a good way to maybe bring this as an example is when we talked about the love languages.
Yes.
Love languages are a way to communicate love.
Right.
And just like with what Alan said, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, the way that you communicate with that person is going to determine how likely they are to receive the communication. Like when you sell to people, there are literally sales things, entire sales
frameworks
frameworks of okay, if they're an emotional buyer, you sell this way. If they're
Right.
an analytical buyer, you sell this way. Like that's how
People make decisions.
people make decisions. That's why we talked about the 4 tendencies. Because everybody is a certain way. Everybody responds to things differently. I don't care about analytics when it comes to, like we were talking about, so for the listeners, when we went to Brendan Burchard's event in Arizona, at the end of the event, you know, as with most events, they say, okay, this is what we're offering. Would you like to buy these things? Are there anything you want to buy? And I don't like being sold to.
Yeah.
It's just something I've never enjoyed. I'm not a fan of it. But the way Brendan did it made me buy. I bought a $2,000 package that day.
Yeah.
The reason is because he said this will get you from A to Z on creating your own online training program. That's it. Boom. It's everything you need to know. I guarantee you will have a program within 60 days. Boom. Cool. I'm in.
And he kept saying, I'm not trying to sell you this.
Right.
I'm trying to implore
Right.
you
And
to
he
take
did,
action.
and he helped.
Right.
It was huge.
Tremendous.
That's the only reason.
That course is on the website, by the way.
Yeah.
In the VIP section.
That's the only reason that's up there.
That's the only reason.
Because Brendan Burchard
Right.
was able to communicate effectively to me.
Yep.
So because Brendan Burchard was able to communicate effectively to me, and I am able to effectively communicate with you if you're listening, and like Alan said, it's in the VIP section. It's an hour and a half. Basically, your
How many modules?
5 modules.
Right.
5 modules.
So it's not an hour and a half all at once.
No,
Right.
it's broken down, but it's an hour and a half course.
Yeah. Great
but,
course.
But it's all about the hyperconscious mindset.
Yep.
It's basically what got me
To change your life.
to change my life. But none of that would have happened if it wasn't for Brendan Burchard. If he was not able to effectively communicate, if we are not able to effectively communicate to you, you don't tell your friends about us.
Right.
You don't share the episodes that you share because
Yeah.
we don't resonate with you.
You don't change your life.
Right.
You don't take action.
Right? Then it's just, oh, these guys are just talking shit.
Right.
Or like, I heard this podcast, these guys don't know what they're talking about. Maybe sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. But the thing is, if I'm talking the language you're talking, then maybe I move you. I'm an E for sure. Like you
Right.
guys know that, I'm an E. I'm emotional.
Yeah.
I'm emotionally driven.
Right.
I do things. I'm a lot about feel.
Right.
And we were talking about that too. We were going to talk about energies.
Yeah.
Remember, we were going to talk about that too. When I walk in a room, I immediately feel the energy of the room. Like when my buddy Matt comes home from work, I know what kind of day he had before he says anything. I know
Right.
exactly what kind of day he had.
Interesting.
And I know what approach to take, and I know how to effectively communicate with him. Like when he's had a bad day, and Matt won't care that I'm talking about this. Because I hope he doesn't listen anyway. He'll come home, and if he had a rough day, some days I just sit. I just sit there and look at him and listen. I don't say a word for a half hour, 45 minutes. Sometimes I just listen.
This is where Kevin's better than me.
I'm a fairly,
this.
I'm a decent listener. I could get better for sure. And then there's other days where I know I have to throw some value in, and I have to get his mind moving a little bit,
Right.
in a different direction, and say like, oh, well, maybe this is the way it is because of this. But that's because I've spent so much time with him.
Your intention in these scenarios is to help him.
My intention is always to help.
Right.
Always.
Okay. That's something that I wanted to make
Oh yeah.
clear.
Because you got to
Because communication with a purpose is more effective
Yeah.
than communication just for the sake of communication.
The biggest difference is like your purpose can always be the same, but your delivery is always going to be different.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to
Exactly.
say. I'm always trying to help and add value.
Right.
But with clients, it's different with different clients.
It always depends.
Right.
That's where I started to really learn
Yeah,
and hone
same
this
here.
is because
I
I have some E's and I have some hard
I have
M's.
some clients
Right.
that are very E,
Yeah.
and I have to be softer, more understanding Kevin,
Right.
which is fine because that's who I am.
Right.
But I also have clients who are just give it to me how it is.
Right.
Like, am I screwing up?
Yeah, right.
I'm telling me I'm eating like an asshole.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's interesting. And I think that the only reason that you and I are learning so much about communication is because we're forcing ourselves to communicate more.
Our intention is to help people, and
Yeah.
communication is the vehicle in which to do
Yeah.
that. Period.
Yeah, we're
if you're
learning
not
that.
getting through to people, you can't
Right.
help them, and therefore, you and I are dead in the water.
Yeah.
And if you're out there right now and you have a mission, a purpose, a dream, a goal, an intention to help others, which I hope you do, because I think maximizing your potential, as I've said many times, is going to be through the service of others, through the service of something greater than yourself. You're going to need to master communication with yourself and with others in order to lead.
So I did a 20-minute listener call last week.
Yeah.
And on the 20-minute listener call, this young lady and I were talking about her relationship. And she said it all changed. So her number 1 and number 2 love languages, I believe, were quality time and physical touch, I believe. Quality time was definitely number 1. I do not recall what number 2 was.
Right.
But she said when we moved in, we moved in together, things kind of changed.
Right.
And I said, well, from experience,
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
sure that you effectively communicate what quality time means to you, because
Right.
when you move in
Right.
with, I'll just say me, a man,
Yeah.
me, if it was me,
Yeah.
sometimes quality time gets clouded, and we assume
Time.
yeah,
is quality
we
time,
assume
even-
that we live together, so we're spending a lot of quality time together.
Right.
Now that's a shift that I have made, and I understand that's not the way it is. But
This is a
you have to
mistake I've made,
understand,
too, for sure.
if she doesn't effectively communicate how she's feeling,
Right.
that will probably get worse.
I've been in a relationship where the other person, and totally understandably, said, I feel like sometimes I feel like we're speaking different languages. We actually were.
Right.
I was talking logic and rationality. She was talking how she feels. And she was trying to, in hindsight, she was trying to communicate to me like the exact same thing that you're just referring to, which is hanging out and you falling asleep
Right.
during a movie is not quality time to me. Whereas to me, I thought we were spending time together.
Right.
Even though I'm exhausted at the end of the day. And to me, that's my safe place, right? Of course I'm going to fall asleep. I'm comfortable. I can finally give it a fucking break after a hard day. And in my mind, that was quality time. In her mind, she was trying to articulate to me, communicate to me that doesn't work for her. That doesn't count for her. She would rather have fun, unique experiences. She would always try to tell me, like, I'm trying to make memories. I want to make memories together. And I was...
Making dreams.
Right. Right. Yeah. And now I understand that in hindsight through failure and mistakes and understanding this new framework. If you're out there, this is a game changer. Understand how you communicate with yourself. Like, if you're ES, that's okay. But now... think about it this way. If you want to go to the gym, you have to communicate to yourself, okay, I don't feel like it, but let me focus on how I'm going to feel after. After a great workout, you're going to feel so good. Focus there and you'll want to go. Whereas with me, all I have to do is, Alan, if you don't go to the gym, you won't achieve your goal. Get to the fucking gym.
Do we have any examples? Do you know any off the top of your head of where you and I have battled with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I don't know. I can't think of any because at the time I didn't know. I just thought, oh, Kev, you're being soft.
So this happens because Kevin, just to make this framework more clear, Kevin is EPMS. In other words, emotional first. I'm MPES. In other words, mental first. So I'm more knowledge based. He's more feeling based. I would argue that I'm more logical thinking. He's more feeling. So he feels his way into action more than I do, and I think my way into action more than he does. So sometimes him and I will have a tiff. And what's an example of that? After 2 Marines, 1 Mike, right, in where were we?
We were
Boca
in
Raton.
Boca Raton, Florida. Shout out to Phil and Wade. You guys are the shit.
So I'm going to speak very frankly about Kevin. Hopefully he's okay with this.
Oh, boy.
Sometimes I make the mistake of taking over and I suppress. Here's what I believe to be true, okay? I believe that people who are emotionally driven just want to express themselves. And sometimes I overtake the show to a point where I suppress the other person's expression. And when I've done this on the podcast with Kevin by interrupting him or, going too far down the mental side of things, sometimes he doesn't get a chance to speak or to express his truth. And when that happens, he doesn't know why, but he doesn't feel good. And sometimes he'll get upset with me or frustrated with me or annoyed with me, understandably, totally understandably. And then I have to take a step back and go, oh, shit. Like, I totally didn't give him the space and the opportunity to express himself,
Yeah.
Right.
We had a little, but after that episode, you and I had like a fight. That was like the first time.
Right.
That was the first time we had a fight.
Yeah.
Like literally, we were driving to yoga with behind them after, and I was like, "Yo, you fucked up, man.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?"
Right.
But the problem is we didn't effectively communicate.
Yeah, because we didn't know what the fuck was going
Right.
on. This is before we knew this framework,
Right.
by the way.
And
This
then-
is before we knew ourselves.
And we're both crying again.
Right.
It's like, guys, if you listen to the last episode, you're gonna think we cry all the time.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's the thing for me. Like, Alan will say something, and I'll say, "I feel like."
Right.
And I'll say something to Alan, and he'll say, "I think that." But the thing is, like, I feel like this is the way to go. I think that this is the best course of action. That's just the difference between us.
Right.
And I think that, and I'm going to be very candid. Yesterday, we sat down. We were lucky enough to sit down with Dave Meltzer, be in a group of, there was probably 5 other people there, and pick his brain. Guys, Dave Meltzer is the most successful person we've had on this podcast in terms of finances.
Oh, yeah.
He's worth $120 million. Like,
Yeah.
that's unbelievable to be able to shake that man's hand.
Yeah. Just to put that in perspective, he can buy like a fleet of planes.
Yeah, he can buy
All the-
anything in the world he wants.
Right.
Anything.
Yeah.
Right? So at the end of it, we got back to the hotel, and as always, like, we're figuring out, okay, what could we have done better? Like, this wasn't just a sit down. This is us, a chance for us to learn. It's a chance for us to add value and get a relationship and
Networking.
network. Yeah. So this wasn't just,
potential mentor.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
And afterwards I was like, I feel like you really did a good job, man. I feel like you were really doing a good job, but I didn't feel like I did a great job. And we were talking about why. And it's like, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm usually far more emotional than people, and that's the one thing that I have. And like Dave has that more than I do. And I'm not used to that. I'm used to being the leader in that. Right? And it helped me tremendously to realize, like, okay, that's fine. That doesn't mean you're less valuable.
Right.
There's times where I have to step back and let Alan do his thing. If we have when we had Mark Metry on,
Yeah.
as an example, if you guys wanted to talk about circuits and fucking whatever it is you guys want to talk about,
Right.
there are certain things that that ain't me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I have to understand that it is what it is. And that doesn't make me a bad host. That doesn't make me a less skilled podcaster. That doesn't make me a bad coach. It just means that I have to understand the strengths that I bring to the table. And I think that's another part of effective communication is with yourself.
Yeah.
Because of this framework, afterwards, Alan and I were literally able to diffuse why I was feeling the way I was feeling.
Yeah.
That was an interesting thing for me, being in the room right next to Dave and feeling like, I don't know how much value I can bring here. And that was interesting. But because of this framework, it helps. It helps me tremendously because I need to know.
Right.
I need to know why things are the way they are and why they aren't working the way they are.
Yeah, which is
So-
being hyper conscious.
Right. So
Right.
if that's something that if you find yourself getting in a room with people and you feel like, shit, I'm not good enough to be in this room, don't say it that way. What do you have that these people don't? What is your strength that their strength might not be?
Right. Exactly.
I think that it's always crazy because the episode always goes differently than we think it is, but I think I didn't have the intention of talking about communication with yourself. But you communicate with yourself more than anybody on the face of this earth, and that it will never change.
Every second of every day.
Every second of every day. So make sure your communication with yourself is effective.
Understanding your own strengths and weaknesses. Like, I'll just be frank. Like, and the PMES, by the way, it's like, I think that's the formula. For me, I think in formulas. I think in equations. I like everything to be calculated. That doesn't mean that you've heard that saying. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yep.
I've had people reach out on this podcast after I read the Teddy story, and I bawled my eyes out on this podcast. And I've had so many people reach out because I think they realize, oh, he cares a lot more than I thought he did.
Yeah.
And like last night, I started crying immediately when I said that sometimes I have trouble connecting with people. I think it's because most people, we should be honest here. I think most people are emotional first.
For sure.
I think a large majority of the population is more E than they are M.
So as we said on the 4 tendencies,
Right.
when we talked about the 4 tendencies, the highest group the majority of people are obligers,
which are
And
E first.
which are usually E first because it's hard for them. It's easy for them to do work for other people, but they need accountability to do work for themselves.
Yep.
Because
They care
need-
about others so much.
Exactly.
Right.
They don't think their way into action. They have to feel like they're letting somebody down to get into action.
Exactly.
So that kind of lines up with what an E is.
Right.
An emotional.
And so if you're out there and I guess identifying what you are and realizing that that's a strength if you leverage it.
Right.
Right. And so for me, for example, I might be better than Kevin at connecting with someone who's far more M. Like Dave Meltzer, for example, he got an 800 on his math SATs. For just to put that into perspective, he's like a fucking genius. Like I got a 690 and that's like a top percentile. Dave Meltzer is like
That's a perfect score.
I
800.
I thought that it's a perfect score. To get a perfect score on your math SATs is like, I don't want to say 1 in a million, but it might actually be statistically 1 in a million.
I'll see if I can.
Yeah,
find
let's see if we can find that. A perfect score on your math SATs is absurd. And by the way, like I picked up on that right away. He said that in passing because he's not very ego driven. He's developed his E very much. I would argue that Dave Meltzer is extremely developed in P, M, E, and S. But he talks a lot. If you go back and listen to that episode, it was only 20 minutes. He talks a lot about his past. And his past, he was far more M than he was E. Now, here's the thing. We talk about the drive to 5. I would argue that people that are very physical and mental struggle with ego. I would argue the people that are very emotional and spiritual struggle with suppression. In other words, they don't feel heard. They don't feel understood. They don't feel like they have enough courage or like they have enough discipline, right? And so the key is to understand where you are and how you're communicating with yourself and others, and more importantly, how you leverage your strengths toward what you want more of. So if you are E first, you probably are phenomenal at connecting with other people. You probably, can get to a heartstring quickly with others. You probably cry during movies more. It's a wonderful thing because you care so deeply. The problem is that sometimes you probably struggle to take consistent action. Sometimes you probably struggle to make the right decision. And understanding I'll just use my clients as an example. I have some clients that are extremely E. I have other clients that are extremely M. With the M clients, I'll say things like, yo, if you don't go to the gym, you won't be in shape. Therefore, you must. That's all logic. There's no emotion there. And then they'll take action. With an E, I might have to figure out, okay, well, how do you feel about that? It's like, okay, well, imagine how good you're going to feel when you have the body of your dreams. Like, if you don't go to the gym, you won't feel good about yourself. And if I talk in that language, they'll get it. And so the key is to understand how you're effectively communicating with the other person, because if you're communicating in a way that they're not wired for, you're not going to get through and you're going to feel like a failure in terms of your ability to influence other people.
Less than 1%. I couldn't come up with a good number.
Okay, less than 1%.
Yeah.
Right.
So basically what they said is it's less than 1% and 2 million people take it on average a year.
Right.
So you got to think 1% of that is 20,000, but it's less than that for sure.
And I want to bring some context too. I spent a lot of time at WPI. WPI is a very hardcore engineering school. It's sort of like, it's literally referred to as the mini MIT. Now, why is my M more developed than Kevin? It's not because I have higher potential than Kevin. It's because I'm farther along in the compound effect of being in rooms with M's. I spent my entire college career in rooms with extreme like geniuses. That 800 SAT thing, most of my friends in college were all in the 700 plus math SATs. Also, if you're out there, by the way, and you're more M, you're probably better at mathematics, logic, discrete mathematics, calculus. Like, numbers are your shit. Whereas if you're more emotionally driven, you might be saying to yourself, I hate math. Math's
Also,
hard for me. There's nothing wrong with either one.
We were talking about Eminem earlier.
Yeah.
So why do I like music? When I go to the gym, I don't necessarily listen to like hard rock, or I'll literally listen to acoustic music. I'll literally listen to sad songs. I listen to more than one time. I've listened to A Star Is Born soundtrack in the gym.
Great soundtrack.
Why? Because it makes me feel.
Makes you feel.
It makes
yeah.
me feel.
Yeah.
And I need
Which
to
is
feel.
powerful.
Oh, for sure.
Because when you feel, you're that's like rocket fuel.
Why do you think I write?
Right.
If you guys follow me on Instagram, you know I write music.
Right.
Why? Because I feel it, and I want to make you feel it.
Yeah.
That's why I do it.
Yeah. And if you look at my Instagram, you probably don't like it.
Right.
If you're an E, because
Alan's
it's all
thinking.
It's all strategy. and
Dramatic
logic.
reading.
Dramatic reading
Yeah,
time.
since we're already over on time.
Sounds good.
And we got to drive home from New Jersey at some point today.
That's a fact.
Check out of
We
this
do have
hotel.
to do that. You're right. I was immersed. Okay,
No,
so
it's okay.
this dramatic reading is super, super relevant because it's from David Meltzer's book. It's called Connected to Goodness.
Like it.
And communication and connection, I think, go hand in hand. Effective communication will help you connect with others, which will help you fall in love, build relationships, do all the wonderful things. So this book was given to us yesterday by Dave, and we got a signed copy, which is really cool.
Yes.
Okay, so here we go.
2 books. From
Strategy principle, key element number 4. This is the 4th part of a different chapter in his book, but it's called communication. Okay. As a teenager, you are sure about everything. But as you get older, you realize that you cannot be 100% sure, and that's fine. We also know how detrimental it is to carry the energy or need to be right. How many times have you thought you were 100% sure of something only to find out you were wrong? My goodness, me all the time. Okay, at least you don't have to suffer through my wife's I told you so dance. The bottom line in business is that everyone needs to be on the exact same page. In other words, aligned so that there are no misunderstandings. Apples need to be compared to apples. The problem with words is that they have different meanings to different people. And even worse, they have different emotional associations. Question terminology that you may not be familiar with, or the context within which it is being used. Be more interested than interesting. I love that.
He said that several times yesterday.
And learn to answer this situation with, let me check on that. Great questions are, what did you mean by that? What does that mean to you? I actually stress the need to over-communicate. This ensures alignment and easier energy flow in today's world. With so many means of communication, it's simple to do, yet so interestingly, with more tools available to communicate, in other words, text, email, all that kind of stuff, technology, I've seen people communicating less and less. Or should I say they are communicating less effectively. As famed football coach and television analyst Lou Holtz says, it doesn't matter what you said, it's what they heard. Powerful. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification, confirm appointments, due dates, receipts of emails or phone calls, facts, and anything else that might result in misunderstandings or confusion later. With over-communication, we are living above the line in accountability and not in blame, shame, and justification. With over-communication, we know how the ego works and we don't have the need to be right, a need to be offended, or a need to be superior. When I'm aware that my communication is not being heard, I create a strategy to change what I am saying and how I am saying it to see whether more people are understanding or not. All right, last part here. I can impart what I think are great ideas all day long, but if I'm not reaching you, if I haven't communicated effectively, it doesn't matter what I'm saying. If I haven't been able to communicate effectively, I won't be able to share my vision to the nth power. To empower those to teach others what I am teaching them, and to shift your own energy to create more positive energy in the universe. So, folks, the thing about effective communication is you have a voice, you have unique gifts and talents. There's never been someone exactly like you, and there quite literally never will be, not only genetically, but experientially. No one's lived your exact life. No one ever will again. You have the ability to influence others in a positive way, but your ability to influence others in a positive way is totally predicated on your ability to communicate with them.
Beautiful.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave,
That was Dave Meltzer.
Well, no, I know, but the last part was you.
Oh, thank you.
I think another thing too that was mentioned in there, and something that I was actually thinking about too, is our communication most of the time is this.
I know.
Okay, if you're on YouTube, you see me. I'm holding up my cell phone. That's most of how we communicate nowadays. So make sure when you get in the room with somebody that you love, going back to our last episode, that you're communicating
Right.
emotion.
Right.
Because you can't communicate emotion with your cell phone.
Yeah. Text
It's
don't
not the
communicate
same.
emotion well. That's why luckily we have emojis.
Yeah, I know. But
Right.
effective communication is also posture. It's also eye contact. It's also, physical touch. There's so many things that
I know.
we rely on these cell phones. And when you're in the room with somebody that you care about and you love,
Right.
make sure that you're giving them effective communication.
Where they're feeling it.
Yeah, where you're able to spread your feelings and your emotions.
Right.
So I think that's super important. Were you going to say something?
I just want to say one quick thing. Folks, if I'm honest with myself, this is one of my biggest weaknesses. I don't want to say I'm a bad communicator compared to the norm, maybe, But I can tell you one thing. I'm definitely dissatisfied, to be honest, with my ability to communicate with others in the sense of I want to get better at it. I just want to get way better at it. And if you're out there right now, I really do think that learning how to communicate effectively should become a huge intention of yours, because I think relationships are the best thing in life. And if you can't communicate effectively, you can't build and grow and sustain love. So I wanted to give the listeners more why power to really master this area.
I think, honestly, if you're listening, you should start with yourself. You should start with effectively communicating with yourself, because you communicate with yourself more than anybody else in the world.
Yep.
And I think that will help you build confidence. And that'll help you build self-esteem. And that'll help you get clarity on what you want. If you're looking to build confidence, head on over to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com/free. We just put I think it's 27 minutes. A 27-minute video on the 5 ways that you can start building confidence now. That's in the free section of the website, so we have other videos there as well. But I think that when it comes to effective communication, that is one of the most important things ever, because communication, it's like anything that's not effective doesn't matter.
Right.
You know what I mean?
If it didn't get through.
Marketing.
Right.
Effective marketing.
Effective communication is
comedy.
Right.
Effective comedy. Like, if it's not effective, it's
wasted
not
energy.
working. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Interesting episodes today in the
Good
hotel.
ones. Good ones.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you enjoyed our last Small Talks episode on love. Up next, we have a very special and interesting episode where Alan and I actually sat down and interviewed one of our listeners. Her name is Tiffany Wells. She's actually a client of mine. It was super interesting to be able to sit down and talk to somebody who is going through the same stuff that we're going through. And the reasoning that we did it is because if you're listening, if you're watching, there is a good chance that you're going through the same thing, the same exact things that she's going through.
Yeah.
She went through a really toxic relationship, and she got to the point where she was very similar to me, suicidal. And she really had no hope, and she had no vision of a brighter future. And because of the podcast, that helped her tremendously. And, I've been lucky enough to work one-on-one with her. But I think we wanted to bring somebody on that would resonate with you guys to show that, like, even if you're making small steps, no matter how small they might seem, if they're in the right direction, that is all that matters.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Direction is far more important than speed. There are a lot of people that are going nowhere fast.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Not bad, right?
Tiffany, I'm so incredibly proud of you. That episode went amazingly. And don't miss that one, because speaking of communication and connection, I think she's going to connect with all of you so much.
Yeah, that'll be dropping Sunday at 7 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed. We are going to pack up this messy-ass hotel room, check on out of here, and drive home to Massachusetts. And we will talk to you later.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of the Hyper Conscious Podcast.
Going hyper-conscious will absolutely change your life, because if you understand why something is the way it is, now you have the power to change it. If you going hyper-conscious with us has changed your life in any way, please share this episode with one of your friends, because the more people that go hyper-conscious, the better this world's going to be for everybody.
And if you would kindly leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would help us make more people hyper-conscious, and we would be greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
Bye.